What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're going to jump in and talk about Season of Dawn prep. But when we talk about prep for a new season, or one of the new Year 3 seasons, it's definitely a bit of a different situation to what we've seen in the past. Right now we have just 17 days left of Season of Undying, and so we are going to talk about everything that's going away and how some of the season changeover will actually happen. And this should help if you don't have loads of time to play, or are maybe newer to the game. But we're also going to talk about what could be worth saving, some potential ways to get little boosts as we roll into Season 9, and some of the stuff that actually might not be worth doing beyond a certain point, with some of the sandbox and system changes that Bungie have confirmed for next season, and some additional ways that you can get ready. So, of course, there is no absolute rush. We're not necessarily expecting an absolutely massive content drop or anything like that in December. Exactly how you approach the new content is entirely up to you. But first, let's speak about Season of Undying, some of the seasonal stuff in general, and initially, the Season Pass. Of course, a very good shout would be to get the Season Pass cleared before the end of the season, and for players spending a lot of time in the game, this definitely isn't difficult, but of course maybe a bit more of a grind if you are a fairly casual player. But some of the items inside of the Season Pass in general are going to be really useful, loads of upgrade materials, and especially when you get to things like the Ascendant Shards and Enhancement Prisms, things like exotic engrams, which can produce new stuff like the Monte Carlo. You know, these are some of the drops that are generally more difficult to get in the actual endgame, and so be sure not to ignore them. And then we have seasonal bonuses which increase Glimmer gains, XP boosters, and of course the seasonal exotics and themed items and weapons. Once again, the upgrade materials and exotic engrams are definitely the most useful for players who aren't running things like Ordeal Nightfalls, and we'll talk about that more in general in a couple of moments. But if you're looking to progress reasonably quickly and you do have a good few ranks to still do in the Season Pass, you can farm bounties for XP, and this is something that you should generally be doing if you want to make good progress with that, either in the form of literally farming nothing but bounties on the moon as quickly as possible. That's one of the strategies where you basically pick up Eris's bounties, pick up the additional bounties, go into a lost sector, farm them to completion, turn them in, then repeat the process. The alternative to that is just to make sure that you're completing a lot of bounties as you play other content. But another shout if you are worried about access to season ranks. Bungie had said that they plan to sell season rank progress in one form or another at some point towards the end of this season. We are going into the final 2 weeks, and so it seems likely that that option is going to become available. Now, I know that for a lot of you guys who play a lot of Destiny, a lot of that info wasn't necessarily new, but in general, when you're done needing XP for the Season Pass this season, and especially in the last week if you're a fairly hardcore player, it could be worth saving your bounties and avoiding turning them in. Of course, the main reason is that in the last week or so of the season, we need to bear in mind that the artifact will reset and be replaced with a new artifact, and that means the power bonus that we've got on it will also be removed. All of the mods from the current artifact will go away as well, and that will leave them unslotted on our gear. And so remember that any bonus power that you get in that last week essentially is going to be taken away within a few days on December 10th. And so the question would be, is saving bounties for Season 9 actually going to be a useful thing? Well, initially we should say that Bungie haven't spoken about this. They could have some kind of new system where all bounties are auto-turned in, or something crazy like that, although it doesn't necessarily seem likely. It also doesn't seem likely that holding bounties is going to give you a monumental amount of progress or anything like that going into the new season, but I guess if you pick up daily bounties and have a bunch of them ready to turn in on day 1 of Season of Dawn, it's definitely going to give you that boost forward, because it might unlock the first few packages in the Season Pass, maybe some new drops as well. Remember that this season, one of the first packages had armor, as well as Ariana's Vow, and of course the artifact, which unlocked at rank 7. And being able to get that artifact unlocked relatively quickly, then pick up new bounties to start unlocking XP to get access to the new mods, obviously is going to accelerate your progress. But also important is that you do see things like XP or Fireteam boosters in those first few ranks, and so if you can jump up a few levels pretty quick, it definitely isn't going to hurt and will give you that boost into the new season. Another thing to bear in mind here that could potentially be useful would be to actually try and save some of the Vanguard, Crucible, or Gunsmith daily bounties which progress the weekly vendor milestones. Currently, these trigger powerful drops, and if they're still there next season, holding on to the daily bounties to actually get them completed could be a useful way to get some powerful drops, and that's assuming that Pinnacle and powerful thresholds actually move up, right? Because theoretically, where powerful gear currently isn't useful to players who are on the Pinnacle grind, in the early part of next season, as far as we know, powerful gear will be useful once again. So if you had a bunch of Vanguard bounties, you could turn those in and get an early powerful drop if that's something you're interested in. But I will update you guys if we get more info on saving bounties, any changes there, and other potentially useful stuff to keep hold of. Here though, we need to talk about content that is going to be going away, and in general, any of the Undying or Vex Offensive related collections do generally need to be completed inside of this season. So there are some pretty good weapons and certain roles on particular weapons which can be really good on particular platforms. You know, things like the hand cannon from the Vex Offensive can actually roll out with Outlaw or Rapid Hit and then Kill Clip. And so there are little gems in there. And bear in mind that Optative, Adortative, Subjunctive, and the Scout Rifle Imperative, which come from the Vex Offensive, will go away and not be obtainable after the end of this season. Of course, that is the same for the Perfect and the Temporal Claws, and these are the two weapons from this season's pass. And then also the seasonal armor, universal ornaments from the season pass, and other unique themed drops will go away. And so make sure you check up on what's available. I will link a video down below with the Vex weapons and some of the roles that you can get. But of course, the Vex Offensive activity itself will be removed and replaced by a new seasonal activity, and this is the primary reason that the loot table will not be immediately obtainable. Although Bungie did state that they are planning on potentially bringing certain weapons back in the future, but there are no guarantees on what could return and when. If you're wondering about other seasonal pursuits, including exotic quests, ritual weapons, and Undying related quests, DMG did confirm that the only things that'll be going away specifically are the Season 8 First Watch, Battle Drills, and Keep It On quests, which are the Vanguard, Crucible, and Gambit seasonal quests. All of these are required for the Undying title, but when it comes to the exotic quests or any of the ritual weapon quests, so Exit Strategy or Randy's Throwing Knife, those items specifically will continue to be available in the game. Otherwise, new content for the Moon will not go away, so things like the Lectern, the Altars of Sorrow, the Dungeon or the Raid, all of those things as far as we know are sticking around. And so while there may be some urgency to get particular weapons or items from those loot tables if you want them before next season, there is otherwise no kind of immediate emergency because they aren't going anywhere in the game. Next week on the 26th of November, Iron Banner is going to return for the last time in Season of Undying, and Bungie have said that with any of the tokens we have, we can either turn them in the final Iron Banner this season or save them for the Iron Banner in Season 9. Do bear in mind though that the armor for Iron Banner this season will be going away after this event and will not be obtainable. So those are a few more drops which will be going away. Now, what other kind of gameplay prep can you actually do for Season of Dawn? Well, because we're light on details, we don't have any kind of content or new content specific things that we can talk about, but definitely it is worth farming out Ascendant Shards, Prisms, and upgrade materials in general if you can. As we mentioned at the start of the video, the Season Pass will definitely help you if you're catching up, but if you have the opportunity to, farming 980 Nightfalls will definitely be the best thing you can do to kind of get a stash of these materials. In general, if we can, it's good to be kind of upgrade ready for the new rewards that we'll get in Season 9. Of course, right now in the game, stats are pretty important, armor energy is also important, and so it's something to consider if you want to head start getting upgraded next season and kind of staying in that endgame. Something else which could be very useful to do inside of Season of Undying would be to farm Pinnacle gear, and of course power levels and things like that are going to change, but Masterwork armor drops, especially from the dungeon, are pretty rewarding. And if you're a player, once again, who doesn't have a ton of time, maybe it's difficult for you to farm in the Nightfalls to get upgrade materials to Masterwork gear, but the final drop in the dungeon will often reward Masterworked armor. And so while this is slightly higher level content and does require 3 players, it's definitely much more accessible than things like the Raid. And so if you haven't played the dungeon, honestly, it is worth it, if only for the Masterworked armor. But of course, having decent stats on these pieces of gear, and you do get plus 12 on all of the stats as soon as you masterwork a piece of armor, so even if it doesn't start with the absolute best stat roll, having a full set of masterworks definitely gives you a significant bump versus lower level gear. And so generally, we are going to be quite a bit stronger when we go into Season 9 than we were at the launch of Shadowkeep, unless Bungie kind of bump up the power of seasonal content by a significant amount. And so it's going to be pretty useful to have some fully upgraded sets there, ready for new mods to be slotted in, and of course, some of the new gear in Season 9 will consist of universal ornaments, so in theory, a very good armor set right now is going to be a very good armor set for at least the next year or so. Of course, there will also be new armor, and so if you want to save your materials for upgrading that new stuff, the same thing really applies there. And otherwise, to get currency rich before Season of Dawn definitely is not going to hurt you. We know that Glimmer and other upgrade materials are important, and while Glimmer is fairly kind of readily available, once again, bear in mind that with the fresh artifact that we'll get, saving currency and materials in the final couple of weeks could definitely be useful. And so these are all of the things that you can really get ready for on the progression side of the sandbox. But what about the rest of the sandbox evolutions? Well, of course, a big one, or a big change that we're going to see, is a nerf to Recluse. And obviously that's going to influence PvP and PvE because it's a very popular weapon across the board. And Recluse is still likely to be one of the best, if not the best SMG for a number of reasons. But if you do enjoy the weapon and you want to look at some other kind of options that might be a little bit more appealing once Recluse does see that nerf, then there of course is the quest for exit strategy this season. That's a fairly solid SMG. There is also every waking moment that you can get from the Lectern on the moon. This can roll with things like Outlaw Kill Clip or even Swashbuckler, and then you have the Vex Offensive SMG Subjunctive, and this can roll with traits like Surrounded, Swashbuckler, Multi-Kill Clip, or Rampage, so these options could potentially be a little bit more appealing when Master of Arms is nerfed. There is also the bug out bag from the Reckoning, and then some of the exotic offerings like Huckleberry, which is doing really well right now, especially with the Catalyst, but also Risk Runner, which remains to be a very solid SMG, of course. Those are exotics, so they're not going to work for every build, but playing around with SMGs, and also potentially spending some time to get familiar again with some of the solar subclasses, specifically Bottom Tree Gunslinger, Middle Tree Sunbreaker, and Top Tree Dawnblade. All of those subclasses are getting some reasonably significant changes, and it's possible that we'll see more kind of solar-focused artifact mods that interact with those subclasses as well as part of Season of Dawn. We did cover the changes that Bungie confirmed for those subclasses in my video recently, so I'll link that one down below. But otherwise for now guys, I think that is really most of the prep that we can actually do. We will have to wait for more details from Bungie, but I didn't want to leave this video too late, because once again we've only got 17 days, that's literally a couple of weeks, until all this content goes away and we see that next kind of set of changes and content dropped into the game. So hopefully this has been useful, but if you do have any tips or shoutouts for other players, be sure to drop them in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed this video, a rating is very much appreciated guys, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to get subscribed to see a lot more Destiny content. Otherwise though, thank you as always for tuning in, and whatever you guys get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.